Gebracho.
I'm Mr. Winkler.
Nakadamata.
Hallo, Kimara Hashu.
In Akachin. I think nach bechor going big and bear livery, no? Okay, well, since we both know how to speak English, we'll see how we get on with that.
How are you doing? My name's Gillebride.
It's Misha Agif. You may know us from such classics as The Bold and the Beautiful and The Wild and the Restless.
Thelma and Louise.
And we have some questions here for yourselves at the Fraser Ridge homecoming. I really like the website, by the way. Have you had a look at the website? It's really nice. I'll make you send you the
I
link.
hope you're having a fantastic time. It's going to get better.
Aye, because we're here, obviously. So if it's for some reason it's been raining outside or somebody get out the wrong side of bed, it's okay. It's dealt with. So the first question comes from Luann Phelps, and it is, what is the origin of Gaelic? Well, nobody really knows, is the best answer to that, but current thinking, current consensus is that Gaelic language probably originates in the area around the Straits of Moyle, which is the sea between Ireland and Scotland, and that the Gaelic language grew up on both sides of the water, and there was a lot of to and froing because water connected, it didn't divide, contrary to modern belief. We always think about geopolitical boundaries, countries, and people sort of screech to a halt at the border, and on one side they're German, the other side they're French. Well, in this case, going back before the concept of the nation state even came into being, we have a situation whereby we've got a shared culture on both sides of the water in Scotland and Ireland, and it was actually the Grampians, the big mountain range in Scotland, and the Caledonian Forest which separated the Picts on the east from the Gaels of the west. But in what we know as Scotland today, the geographical entity known as Scotland, Gaelic was spoken from probably the beginning of the Iron Age. There's a lot more research to be done, but the popular belief that it came from Ireland is more and more being proven false, because there's no archaeology or topography, so place names and material culture to be found from any previous culture in the area. So you would then have to question that anyone was in the west coast of Scotland before the Gaels arrived on the scene. And the second question is for Gillebride.
This is from Lisa Brown, so thank you for the question. Did you grow up speaking Gaelic, or did you learn the language as an adult? So I learned the language as a child. It's my first language. I come from the island of South Uist in the Outer Hebrides. So South Uist is off the west coast of Scotland. It's part of the larger group of the Western Isles, which would include Lewis and Harris, and then you'd have North Uist, South Uist and Barra, and some of the smaller islands as well. But I come from a place, tiny village called Milton. It's got 7 houses, and when I was growing up in the early 80s, it was a completely Gaelic speaking community. Everybody spoke Gaelic. Going to the shop was a Gaelic speaking immersion activity. Going to church, going to talk to friends, playing football around the house, everything was in Gaelic. Still very strong Gaelic speaking area now. It's changing slightly because more and more people are moving in for the beautiful beaches and the beautiful scenery and so on, and they don't always have Gaelic as an interest, which is a shame. But some people do move there to be immersed in the culture and the language, and it's a great place to grow up, and I love going back, and I still speak to my mother who lives there every day, and she speaks Gaelic, and my brothers live there as well. So, and I speak Gaelic to my own children as well, although they're being brought up in the city.
Magic. If you've never been to Uist, get that fixed. The next question is from Tracy Thompson, and your question, Tracy, was do you feel the demise of Gaelic has been a type of cultural genocide? Why or why not? Well, anyone who knows me will be well versed with my opinions on this, even just if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook. I absolutely feel it was a cultural genocide. We have examples of imperialism all around the world from big political powers I'm sure it's it's still happening today. Maybe in a different kind of fashion from what we're used to from the 19th century. The big, huge conglomerates, swallowing up the planet. But it'll be happening in different ways. So it's still a negative force, unfortunately. But it's been going on since the beginning of time. It's certainly nothing new. What happened to us, it happened thousands of times before that. But it's no less unpleasant for that. Definitely feel that the sort of British elite wanted to put the Highlands in their place because we were the most feared fighting force in Western Europe, and the easiest way to do that, as we all know, is to attack culture. And if they could take our language from us, they could neutralise us, and they could just switch off our identity, just turn it off, mute us, neutralise us, and remove the kind of nuisance of the Northwest, the Highland problem as it was referred to. So all the things that you associate with maybe what happened to Aboriginal Australians or First Nation Canadians or Native Americans, well, they all happened to children here at the same time, but also possibly predating it slightly. The only thing we didn't have here is the boarding schools. We had everything else. Kids got their mouths washed out with soap, they got the strap, they got beaten with meter sticks. They went deaf in one ear because they were beaten about the head so badly. I know people who can't speak Gaelic even though they're native speakers because they just choke up and cry. So it's all getting a bit depressing, folks, but that is the reality of the situation. So when the Bureau of American Indian Affairs wanted to get rid of the language and culture, kill the Indian, save the man, all that kind of a thing, what they did was they came over to Ireland and Scotland and did their homework here, and they found a lot of really, really nasty and effective techniques for killing people's self-respect and their culture. So yes, cultural genocide, absolutely. And then once they perfected their technique, they took it on tour around the world in Technicolor. So there's that rather depressing answer. Sorry I couldn't be more cheery, but it is what it is.
Moving on, we have Jason Monroe. Thanks for this question. What would have been the fate after Culloden of someone like Gwilym the Bard? Well, the bards were really important in Highland society because they were the people who were recording everything that was going on, and the bards would have been at Culloden as well. In fact, there was a very famous bard there on the day, John Roy Stewart, who's one of my favourite bards. He was there at the Battle of Culloden, and he composed songs on the day of the battle, recording people who were injured and died and what happened to the people there. So there's so many poems and songs in Gaelic Scotland that are a hugely important historical record, and what many of the historians who don't speak Gaelic don't understand is that record actually exists. So what would have happened to the likes of Gwilym? Well, some of them would sadly have been killed, but some of them would also have moved on to gone on to places like the Carolinas, Canada and so on, and made a different life for themselves. One of the ironies, I suppose, of what I will say is that many of the people who were fighting at Culloden then went over to the Americas, and again they were fighting for the British. And there's the very famous quote about the Battle of in Quebec, and no great mischief, as General Wolfe said, if some of the Highlanders die. Although they were fighting on his side, he said it would be no great mischief if they died. So that's one of the ironies, I think, that they were passionate Jacobites and loved their Highland culture, and then when they went over, some of them fought on what you might call the wrong side, and fought for the British in that sense of, even when they weren't liked, and as he said, there'd be no great mischief if they died. So
it was another way of getting rid of us.
Yeah.
Out there on the front line we go. Jamie Roberts has asked, how commonly is Gaelic spoken in the present day? Well, I think Gillebride has explained quite well already how the situation is in South Uist, and I think it's similar in Barra, Benbecula, North Uist, Harris, Lewis, and perhaps the very northeast of Skye, Tiree, and maybe small parts of Isla. Elsewhere in the mainland, it's more or less moribund, apart from people who are learning the standard tongue, the book kind of language. I'm in touch with people in most of the glens and islands in Scotland, and most places can count a speakership that you wouldn't use any more than one hand to take count of who they are. So unfortunately, it's not very widely is the answer to that. And I think part B you've got there, Gillebride.
How many Scots are fluent in Gaelic today? So we have about 50,000 who are fluent in the language today. Another 30,000 have some ability in the language in terms of they being able to read it or write it, or they can understand it. Although, as I was said, some of the communities in the Highlands and Islands, the traditional Gaelic communities, if we can call them that, many of those speakers will be older, and maybe they're not. They speak it at home, but maybe their children or their grandchildren don't feel comfortable in speaking it to them. But it's also important, like myself and I have just lived down the road from each other here in Glasgow, and I work at the University in Glasgow with Gaelic speakers, and I work as teaching Gaelic as well. So it's very easy to live your life in Glasgow almost speaking only Gaelic, and then having to go to the shops and speaking English, obviously. But you can certainly make your life in Gaelic in the city.
With a bit of effort, absolutely. Grand. And what have we got here? So we've got 3 questions here, and I'm going to try and skip through them just as quickly but effectively as I can, just to keep an eye on the time and keep it within our time bracket. So Nancy Roach has asked, what is the difference between Scottish and Irish Gaelic? To sum it up very quickly, the difference is about 600 words, a bit of different grammar, definitely a different accent, especially the further south out west you go in Ireland and the further the north and west you go in Scotland. But really speaking, the basics of the language are more or less the same. I would say they must be about 60%, 65% identical. The changes that are there, the accent and little bits of grammar, are significant, and you do have to really pay attention to what those are if you're trying to communicate in Irish, which I can't do very effectively, but I can understand it perfectly well spoken if people slow down. And a couple of Guinnesses and a couple of drams doesn't hurt at all, does it? You know. Is Welsh a different language? Yes, totally. There are 2 sets of sisters, right? And the 2 sets of sisters are each other's second cousins. Scottish, Irish and Manx, that's the language of the Isle of Man, which is just between Scotland, England and Ireland. And Welsh, Cornish and Breton, and Cornish has come back to life, we're very pleased to say, latterly. And so you can see that each of the 3 sets of sisters are definitely related to one another, even though they're absolutely distinct and not necessarily completely mutually intelligible. You know, just like sisters in a family don't always get along. You know, they've got the same upbringing, same parents, roughly the same outlook, but you know they can be decidedly different, and that is the situation here with the languages as well. And then with the second cousins, there are family traits that you can make out. You can go, oh, you know, they've got the Smith nose, you know, or that, and you can see that with for instance between Welsh and say Irish. You could say, oh, okay, so you know they've got the same word for bread almost, and you know the word for big in Irish, so it's more, in Scottish it's more, in Welsh it's maur. You know, you can pick these little things out. And there's also bits and bobs about the grammar that it's extremely similar. But if people were to speak at normal pace in Welsh, Gillebride and I wouldn't make out a word of it, literally, you know. And then just to quickly finish off, if I had learned one dialect, would I understand any of the others? If you learned any Scottish dialect, you would understand the others, save maybe in the very, very northeast and west of Sutherland, where it's extremely different. I know that people from Islay in the very southwest of Scotland really struggle to make out that dialect, and likewise the folks from Sutherland really struggle with the Islay dialect. Some people from Perthshire would probably struggle with the Lewis dialect, because they're quite far away from one another. So there would be points at which unintelligibility would come into play, but in general, I would say absolutely, as long as you're willing to be patient and respectful and just take the time to work out what the differences are and you just come to enjoy them, know. It's a thrill actually when you hear it.
Enjoy the diversity of the language.
Massively, yeah. Where are we now? Sheikh. Oh gosh, it's going to be me talking again. Right, I'll try and get through this one quickly. In the Outlandish Companion Book 1, Diana Gabaldon writes, Gaelic is Irish, Gaelic is Scottish Gaelic. What is the difference? Right, the difference is this, and it's very complicated, but I'll try and do it as quickly as I possibly can. And hopefully by the end of it you'll realise it's not actually complicated. It just takes a while to explain. So, every language has a word for itself in its own mode of expression. So, in Scottish Gaelic, the language is spoken Gaelic or Gaelic. So, Gaelic or the Gaelic, right?
So you'd say ha Gaelic acum.
Gillebride. So, Gillebride just said he has the Gaelic, he speaks it. And then in every other language, you have a word for that language. So, in German, it's Gaelisch. In Spanish, it's El Gaelico. In English, it's Gaelic. Now, the folks who speak the language today natively prefer an English equivalent to describe their language when they're speaking in English that just sounds a little more like their own word for it. So they're more comfortable calling the language Gaelic in English, and that's just a choice. It's something that has grown up naturally, and people prefer to do that. However, don't let anyone tell you that it is wrong to say Gaelic in English, because at the end of the day, what's the next thing? We start telling the Germans, oh, it's not Gaelish, it's Gallish. Or we start saying to the Spanish, it's not El Gaelico, it's El Gallico. So every language has a word for every other language. And if you're a native English speaker, there is nothing wrong with saying Gaelic to describe it. Just be aware that some people will use the term Gaelic and may prefer it. And the other thing is to say that in Nova Scotia, you will never hear anyone saying Gaelic. You'll always call it Gaelic in English. So it's complex, but actually, hopefully more straightforward from what I've said. Or have I just mixed up even further? I'll let you decide. That's cowardly, isn't it? Right, there we go.
So, Lynn Carmichael, how are you? Lynn Nichkilevincha. The question is, could you translate some of the terms of endearment they use in the book? Example, Mochri. Now, I have read the book, so that's good. We have Mochri, literally means my heart, and I suppose that means my beloved, my dear one. You could also have Monian Down, which is my brown-haired girl. Any more? I can't think
probably Metal.
Metal.
Yeah.
Metal means my darling. Etal, so it's my darling. Metal.
Maroon.
Maroon. Maroon is my.
It's an interesting one. It's got that because it's got that.
My desire.
Yeah, it's more like that because it's got that secret element to it as well. So. Yeah. And what I was just going to say is that the last question was from Melissa. I'm sorry, Melissa, I didn't shout you out, and I also didn't shout out Joyce Cosick, Christine Parker, and Mary Helen Ellis. I'm really sorry to all of you because I just answered all those questions in a winner and forgot to mention who they came from.
So we can practice some of those terms of endearment. We can say Mochrie. We can. What was the other ones? Metal. Money and Down. And Maroon.
There we go. And you're up again.
Susan and Zala, maybe? Sorry, Shala. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you know how the Gaelic language might have influenced any particular regional dialects in America? Well, what we do know is that lots of Gaelic speakers moved to the Carolinas, especially Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and many of those were heavily influenced by the Gaels. There were Gaelic churches in North Carolina, for example, where they did some of the presenting of the psalm singing and so on. What the history tells us was that the Gaels very quickly assimilated into the North American culture at the time. So the language didn't survive in any great form after the first or the second generation of the people who went over, apart from where they went over as a group together, and they were the majority of the population in Cape Breton, and Gaelic is still spoken in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia today. I suppose what we could say, the influence of the languages, as Adhamh was mentioning earlier on about the grammar system, we don't have, you'd always, in Gaelic, you'd always answer with the verb that's in the previous statement or the previous question. For example, are you enjoying the events of Fraser's Ridge? Enjoying, and so on. So I suppose the influence you might have in Ireland, especially, it's more noticeable in Irish spoken form. Some people might say, it's a lovely day, it is a lovely day, or something else, or it is that, rather than saying yes or no. So that's just kind of the influence of the grammar system on the language.
And I think another thing was that in a lot of European languages, you know, you say the likes of, you know, comment ça va, or wie geht es, you know, it's a how's it going. But in Gaelic languages, and also in certainly in Spanish, it's a how are you, and that's come through to English. And you would have expected English to follow German or French because it's a Germanic language with a high, proportion of French words. So you'd expect English to use that as well. But how's it going is thought of as a colloquialism in English. You know, almost slang. I hate the word slang, there's no such thing. But anyway, whereas how are you is supposed to be the standard, and it's interesting that, you know, thinking that possibly that might have come out of a Celtic influence, you know, it's possible. With time is rushing on, Will Ferrell has pointed out that in the mountains of North Carolina, well, in the mountains of North Carolina, Sagoglan is an adjective that describes something that just isn't quite straight or is often perpendicular. Does this term have a Gaelic origin by any chance? Well, Sagoglan, I believe, is side goggling. So it's goggling as in goggle, like almost like goggle eyes, Google eyes. It's googly, you know, and it's side googly. So it's you know, that's my take on it. So I don't think it's Gaelic.
And I've never heard of the term, so sorry, I can't help you. The next question from Carolyn Snido-Smith. What is your favourite Gaelic song? Well, it's a good question, and there are hundreds of Gaelic songs, if not thousands, and there are 11 new Gaelic songs as of the last few weeks, because I've composed songs myself, and it's great, I think, that people are composing new songs, not only me, but people like Marianne Kennedy, Adhamh, Alistair White, who are fantastic people to singing. I have to say I do like my Jacobite songs, and I do like John Roy Stewart, so my favourite Gaelic song I think would be Oran Illa Irla Cholotter, which is another song about the Battle of Culloden, because in that song John Roy Stewart gives the history of those who died at the battle, tells how they were killed, and tells about those who were fighting and so on, and it's just a hugely important historical record.
That's brutal. Where are we now? Can you give some? No, wait a minute. Can you give examples of the influence of original Celtic music? The influence of Celtic music on the Appalachian musical style, and that's from Sue Herman.
Yeah, well, I was very lucky in the last probably 10 years ago or so to go to North Carolina to the Grandfather Mountain Scottish Games, probably not very far from where you are at the moment, and when I went there I heard a band playing Appalachian music, and it just sounded as if it was a Ghillie band from back home, and then people were doing clog dancing and they were doing reels, so you've got all that influence of the strathspeys and reels. We've got mouth music in Scottish Gaelic, which was sung before Culloden, but certainly when the bagpipes were banned, it's said to have become more popular. And so those strathspeys and reels are certainly Scottish and Irish, and they would have gone over to North America at that time, and the Appalachian music is definitely based on that type of music, but also taking the influence of people moving and meeting each other. And when you're two or three cultures are meeting together, you get even better music.
Absolutely. How's being involved in the Outlander world made a difference to your lives? From Linda Casey. Well, I can sum it up pretty swiftly in that essentially it has built a foundation for me on which I have managed to place all sorts of really, really important things, work that I was involved in that was previously out of the spotlight, maybe didn't have very much support. I suppose there's been, to an extent, there's been a little bit of credibility for myself professionally that's come from working on something so big and so successful. And I'm just really pleased at some of the doors that it's opened up. You know, the fact that it's opened doors into new and interesting territory. And to be honest, best thing for me is just all the people that I've met. We can't meet all of yourselves personally, which is unfortunate. But I hope this is the next best thing. But that's one of the great things is the people. There's just so many good people out there, and I tend to find that if people can sit and read, 1,000-page books, and quite often several times, they tend to have a sort of presence of mind, attention to detail, and culture that you don't get from everybody. So Outlander fans are definitely a very appreciated breed over this neck of the woods.
Absolutely. And yeah, for me as well, it's just been the chance to meet lots of wonderful people. Now, I've been teaching Gaelic for many years and singing for many years, but I can honestly say that the last number of years have been by far the most successful in terms of getting people engaged with my music and getting people to know about my music.
And getting all those CDs out of your attic as well.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely, because I have to. I love Outlander fans because they're so passionate about everything, and part of the reason which some of the I think I'm probably speaking for both of us, there's a certain apathy that sets in with certain Gaels and people who are interested in Gaelic language, and they don't really have the passion, but Outlander fans certainly have passion.
Yeah,
and that's,
if only we
that's
could if we could bottle that and sell it,
yeah, then
that would be really disingenuous and weird and nasty. Yeah. So let's not. Let's just enjoy it.
We'd be very rich.
So yeah, and sort of leading on from that, Deborah Morlock asks the question: since Outlander has become even more of a worldwide obsession in the past few years, how have you seen people's opinions change concerning the history of Scotland? And I think that's the great thing about it, is that there's been a light sort of shone on it. And when Outlander fans come here, they come here with that passion. And, very occasionally, don't get me wrong, with all due respect, very occasionally it borders on slight wrong-headedness. They're just like, let's do this, come on, And you have to kind of say, okay, great, love it, come here. But, can I just turn... Yes, that's it. Okay, on you go. And so it's been a fantastic thing to have that spotlight, though, that passion shone on the country and on the history and on the language and the culture. And suddenly we're sort of like, oh, we better do something to kind of meet this. And so that's been a great thing for me. Obviously, I've done a lot of tours. That's been a big part of my income and able to put food on the table. And that's been a fantastic thing, being able to redirect people's interests in towards the real roots of things and the real things that are really culturally integral. Obviously, Scottish people are always resistant to things that come from outside. So the programme hasn't really taken off in a big way here because it's about Scotland. I guess the American equivalent would be, a programme about the States where the theme tune was Home of the Brave or something. You'd be like, yeah, okay, we've seen and heard it. And it's a shame, because if they gave it a chance, they'd really enjoy it. But it's always the thing, when something's made about your home area, your immediate reaction is to go, that's that American programme, So it would be great if we could somehow have a little bit of the passion from yourselves and be able to engage more in the history ourselves through that, with that, and get a decent sort of mix of the two and counteract some of the apathy. It would be great. So I think it's ongoing, it's a process.
Because we have to remember as well that many of the people who are today's taxi drivers, tour guides and so on, were never taught their own history in school. So they're learning as well, in the sense of people actually being interested in where they come from and so on. So it's a case of what I notice a lot of is the more and more people come over, the more and more people say, I haven't actually watched it, but I'm going to watch it and trying to find out my own history. So in that sense, it's been fantastic. For
absolutely. The next page, one for you, sir.
Okay, this is Stephanie Bryant. Hello, Stephanie. The question is, how did you get hired on Outlander, and what is your music background? Well, funnily enough, I knew Adhamh before Outlander, and I saw that his following, what's the word for 1,000,
grown exponentially
in about 3 weeks or something, and
it was scary and lovely.
Yeah. So it was actually a Facebook post that I saw that a major American TV company were looking for a Gaelic singer. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go, and went over to Edinburgh, sang down a video camera, a bit like this, and hope if something equally fantastic will come from this. No, I'm joking. So that's how it happened. And then one night I was told by an email from Sony that I could tell everyone I was Gwilym the Bard, and I put it out in a tweet that I was going to be Gwilym the Bard, and that night I went from about 3 followers to about 2,000. So that sounds incredible. As a singer, I've been singing since I was 4-year-old. Used to sing at mods, at Gaelic singing competitions. I won the gold medal as a child, and then from about 13 to 22, I retired. I didn't enjoy singing, and I went over to Ireland to study Irish. And one night I was in the pub, sitting quietly in the session, and the session leader said, "You're from Scotland, sing us a song." And then the next night I went back and I had to sing another song, and then for about 4 months I was singing one song every night. And then when I came back from Ireland, I thought, I quite enjoyed this, so I carried on singing, and then it just kind of grown from there, and I used to sing at things like festivals such as Celtic Connections and things like that. So and then Outlander's just kind of the cherry on the cake.
And I'm surprised you can even talk anymore with the amount of singing that you do these days. Stephanie again, hello, how you doing? I've met you, I know you. Adhamh, how did you decide to become a Gaelic consultant? Were you fluent as a child or learned later on? How did you get hired for your work in Outlander? I'll need to do this very quickly just to say within time. So that's interesting because we've got the extremely classically native perspective from Gillebride, who was born and raised in a Gaelic speaking community, and so learned Gaelic without really even knowing what it was until, with a native language. With myself, I was raised nominally British, basically. Scottish culture wasn't valued in the house, music wasn't valued, Gaelic was a complete irrelevance. My entire history was kept from me as an irrelevance. Just my grandmother, as I got older, more and more would talk to me about it, and would involve me in the family history, and would talk to me about the history and read me Tales of a Grandfather, Walter Scott's Tales of a Grandfather. So I felt this passion growing me and I've been passionately pro-independence since I was about 8, and I don't really know how, because my grandmother certainly wasn't at that time. It's just something in me. I believe in genetic memory very strongly, and I know some of you out there, will absolutely, know what I mean by that. So I had to learn the language, but I never felt like I was learning it. I just felt like I was packing it back in where it belonged. So occasionally, you'll get people who say, "Oh, well, you're not a native," and I sort of think, well, I'm not a native. I wasn't born and raised with it. But I've raised a family of native speakers myself now, so as far as I'm concerned, that circle is complete again. So it's a reclamation for me, very much a reclamation. How did you decide to become a Gaelic consultant? Well, because of my work on Outlander really convinced me that I was able to do it. I was like, well, if I've managed to work on a Hollywood set for a year, 11, 12 hours, 13, 14 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week, then I could probably run my own business. So that's what I did. How did you get hired for your work in Outlander? It was an email that went out to Salma Rostig from the production saying, do you know anyone who has X, Y and Z skills? Salma Rostig put a big circular email out and it eventually filtered its way down to me, but it was 2 weeks after the email came out, so I thought, the post's going to be filled. But apparently a few people went for the job and they didn't have what they were looking for, or they weren't available, or they were brilliant with actors but they weren't great with grammar, or they were brilliant with grammar but they wouldn't be good with actors, or somehow I had the skills they were looking for, and I went to speak to the producers. I intentionally didn't look and see who they were. I just went in and chatted to them, and 20 minutes later I walked out with the job. And it was a fit. So that was basically it. We're on to a question from Jan Group. What did each of you find most engaging in working with the Outlander crew and story? And we'll need to keep this one fairly brief.
Gillebride? So when I was recording, I think just the crew, it was very definitely a happy crew, a very happy cast, and they were just lovely, friendly people. I loved just the way that Adhamh and Ron had managed to get so much Gaelic on the screen, and it was fantastic. And for me, singing as Will and the Bard, singing a song, the 2 traditional songs and 1 song that was especially composed for the show, was just a huge way of singing in front of lots and lots, millions of people. Although I still think that Sam Hughes was talking over me. My big moment and Sam Hughes talking over me.
Well, it was. You know what I mean? And let's not forget the wig.
Yes, the wig, of course. The wig is definitely.
Can't forget the wig.
Sadly, it wasn't my own hair.
It was a highlight. Except it wasn't blonde. And singing in that hall as well. That set. It was an incredible set.
It was an incredible set. There was no wobbly walls, no wobbly cardboard as in the 1970s.
No.
It was just incredible. The way it was just looked like the most amazing castle, and the only way you couldn't tell it was the castle is if you looked up and you could see the rigging. But otherwise, it was just incredible.
I mean, I used to go around there and just stand in that set sometimes when I was trying to work things out for what I was going to do with the Gaelic, and because although I translated and taught the cast, that wasn't where my job ended. Everyone knows that I would be on set to listen in and make sure everything was right. But I would also, be there to actually partially help block out how the scene worked, in the sense of the delivery of the lines and how people were going to interact with one another. I had to take care of that so that it was natural and it would look and appear that they were actually having a conversation with one another. So sometimes I would go to the set where the scene was going to take place and just stand and soak it up. Kind of method consulting. And now, what was most engaging though about working with the Outlander crew and story? Well, that's an example of it. The other thing was that everyone was really enthusiastic and really decent, and I think just the changes of scenery so often because of the locations and the sets. It would be wrong to say you weren't ever in the same place twice. I mean, you could be for maybe 3 or 4 days, but then you'd be off somewhere else. So that was great, and I got to see a heck of a lot of Scotland that I'd never actually seen before by just going on location. So that was brilliant. There's these spots I didn't even know they existed in my own country. So brilliant locations team. Lisa Brown asks, who of the Outlander cast members caught on the quickest of the non-Gaelic speaking actors to catch on the language? There was nobody who spoke the language previously. Some of the secondary actors, supporting actors did, but the main cast didn't at all. Grant was the quickest to get it. He would have been able to speak the language fluently, I reckon, if I'd given him private tuition within 6 months. He was really quick. Sam was definitely there in second place. Who was the most entertaining or funny learning the language? Well, I mean, it's got to be Gary Lewis. Graham, of course, comes a close second. But Gary Lewis, I mean, I think this is actually on YouTube somewhere, but I was going to, honestly, I think I was on the verge of offing him one day, because instead of practicing these lines, we go to block out the scene, and Gary stands up as, the chief of Leach, gets his serious face on, and then just starts rhyming off whiskey names. Lafroig Lagavullen Talisker, Glenmorangie, Glenfiddich Aberlour. I'm standing at the back of the room going. Actually turned out alright, the speech, not too bad at all. So yeah, that was that would answer all that, actually, I think. And I haven't been involved that much this season on at the end of phone and email, but they've got the Mohawk and Cherokee to worry about, so I think that's keeping them busy. Gillebride, who I could take.
Yeah. Mitzi Monroe, hi. So, since it's my husband's birthday on September the 21st, happy birthday. Can you sing happy birthday to him in Gaelic or give some form of traditional Gaelic birthday greeting? His name is Jason Monroe, so hello Jason.
Was that Jason Monroe? Oh, is that Jason Monroe from... Oh, it could be.
Good question. Yeah. And this will be from his loving wife, Mitzi. So he will be present at the Fraser Bridge homecoming on Saturday, September the 22nd, definitely. So happy birthday, Melton Erkin Jew, Joe Hole Apdegut, Jason. Now, if I was going to be strictly hard-headed about it, there would be no such thing as a Gaelic birthday greeting. Certainly growing up, it would just get on with it. But things, we're slightly calm.
Get on with it now.
Don't get back to work. That's what they would say.
Get back to the mod.
Get back to the mod. But if you were coming in schools, they sing Melton Erkin Jew, which is congratulations today, and they sing it to the same melody. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll just give it a go. So
go for it.
Melton Erkin Jew, Melton Erkin Jew, Melton Erkin Jason, Melton Erkin Jew. Melton Erkin Jew Jason.
Melton Erk. That was not bad for being totally unrehearsed. If we can't get through a 4-line song, though, what can we do, you know? Is that one for me then? Yep, so Carol and Donald Zipfel. How long did it take each day to put on the kilts? How many ways did you find to wear them, and why would you wear them each way? Did you find them easy and comfortable to wear? Well, obviously, you had some kind of outfit on set, didn't you?
Yes, I had the wig and a long velvet jacket with a cravat and a fluffy shirt and socks and brogues. It took a while to tuck everything in, but it was half an hour, and you always had someone to do it for you.
Mm-hmm. The great kilt, the process for putting it on is greatly exaggerated. The pleating, the process of the pleating was nowhere near as laborious as people make it look in YouTube videos and what have you. You just went boom, 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 whacked your belt under, lay down, whacked it on, you'd have your shirt on already, up it goes, on with your leather jerkin, you know, pin the excess through the shoulder, on with your bunnet, strap your sword round your whatever and your sporran, and off you go. Your leather shoes, your hose up to below the knee. And that was only for travelling or going into battle. Most of the time you just wore your shirt and hose that went right up here and were actually crotchless, which I think is something to do with you being able to go and use the facilities, i.e. a tree, when you were out working. The idea that Gaels were always in kilts is actually false. They only wore kilts to travel because it was their bed cover. The plaid was just their bed cover, and it was an easy way of taking it with them. So they pleated it to make it portable and hung it about their person. And obviously it became stylised because it looks really cool. So they figured out different ways of wearing it, but actually it's just a way of transporting your bed covers. And then what do you enjoy most about what you do from Ellen Reinhardt?
So thank you, Ellen. That's a good question. Well, I'm very lucky, as we are both, to do what we love doing and teaching about the Gaelic language. So I teach Gaelic language at Glasgow University and teach about the literature and the history of the language and so on, and the culture. So it's a fantastic thing to do that, because I just love talking about Gaelic language and teaching Gaelic language. But also I love now singing Gaelic language, and I love singing in front of people. So it's a joy to sing in front of people and sing especially in Gaelic.
And it helps that people love you singing in front of them.
Well,
it's a bonus, isn't it?
It'd be a shame if they didn't. So.
For myself then, I would say honestly just getting to work with the old folk that I do. I got to go all the way around the Highlands. The University of Nevada have been instrumental in making that happen, and I just really love meeting old people, getting their wisdom, you know, being able to share the time with them and listen to what they have to say and what they have to teach. You know, that's my favourite thing about the work that I do. And then we've got the last question here, haven't we?
Yeah, so can we learn a few words like hello the house or Fraser's rich homecoming family of new friends in Gaelic? So, hello the house, I suppose we'd say Shin Shivula,
You know.
and also we were working this and it would be Carajanura Chiligachi Dreamnum Fishalach. So, Carajanura Chiligachi Dreamnum Fishalach. But Gaelic would be Shinu,
Shinu, yeah.
Shin Shivula.
Shinchuhe. That's it. So just to finish in the last minute, I think we should just do another quick wee number, shall we?
Yeah.
Wee bit of Omagui. And this is a song about youists. So one of the very first songs I ever learned, in fact, but the second song I ever learned. So let's do it. Omagui stuid mother. Wish Huriur Nangalan Faram Feitchen at the Nuishla Faram Betul to Vachichedan Chi the Guran, Chi the Nyalir Chi some Palchahul Shorsa Faram bile kiden noga Galoran skolen jale Ikja truking kara shalte Gusar mele var njalish Moliat gunjane toba Du ich gun gun vaya Nambiakam hinges horas Dai should ich paie rocken Agus mar vinam foka Saune ruish yamin shaw Have a great time. Bianach Louis.
Cheers.